start off with relating to some health and well-being. And then we've got breakout sessions for the different sub-networks. So looking at FACES, software skills and innovation, trying to remember them now, ED&I, and we have one for health and well-being. So this is a new format of meeting that we're trialing, so that we're giving each of the sub-networks the opportunity to meet together and trying to do this in one place. We're also trying to move away from doing the ICS meetings. We found that we weren't getting much attendance and they were done intermittently between the different ICSs. So in an effort to streamline everything, because everyone's really busy and struggling with capacity at the moment, we'll try and bring those sub-networks and those ICS meetings together into this one Northwest meeting. It's more in line with what the other regions do, and hopefully it'll help free up capacity. I know I was sort of duplicating work trying to do it for the Manchester and the Northwest region, so hopefully it'll free up capacity to help people engage and be more involved. We still have our Leeds networks across the different ICSs, and they'll be working on specific things as we sort of develop and go on. So if anyone is interested in joining that Leeds group, if you let me know, we can point you in the right direction of the people to talk to. And I'm conscious there are some other meetings that go ahead as well, particularly for ED&I, where they meet more regularly and they feed back into a more formal structure. So this will be more just a general approach, an open meeting for that when we do our EDI section. I don't think there are any other updates from me. Megan, do you have anything from the national team at the moment, or is it? I'm conscious we probably haven't met since the end of last year with planning and everyone being really busy, so I don't think there's much changed at the moment. But
no, nothing from me from the central team. Thanks, Gavin.
Yeah. I suppose I'll just open it up if anyone else has got anything they'd like to add or anything at the moment. No? Okay. Well, so we will move on to our showcase session then. So Michael Barnes from the Christie is going to present on some of the health and wellbeing work they've been doing there. And then presumably we'll have some time to sort of feedback after that before moving into our breakout sessions. So I'll hand over to Michael now.
Okay, thank you very much. And firstly, apologies if you were in the costings showcase this morning. You'll probably be sick of my face because this is the second presentation of the day, so I do apologise for that. But in terms of the health and wellbeing element and our step tracker, firstly, I've got a couple of slides. The first bit is kind of a meet the team. So we've got Sarah, who's our financial services manager, Ellie, our assistant director of finance, Sharon, who's an assistant director of finance as well, and myself, the interim head of costing. This is currently the health and wellbeing champions at the Christie. We are opening up to more people hopefully join us as we get going further in this, and we've all got kind of our own different special interests. For myself, a little bit of background to me. I've worked in the NHS now for about 10 years, primarily in the costing space. I'm a father of 3 daughters and have a border collie dog. My daughters and my dog keep me very busy, and I actually find that being active, running, walking, swimming, doing those things are very positive to my mental health, to being active, to keeping me in a routine and some semblance of structure when my daughters, who are now coming up on 4, cause an awful lot of chaos. So quite frequently I go off to go and do some walks to kind of have that internal monologue, listen to nature and just calm myself down a little bit. I'll always remember when my daughters were possibly coming up on 1. We had a particularly problematic night and my wife kicked me out of the house to go for a walk at 2 in the morning to go and watch the sunrise and have a little bit of time off. So walking, being active is very core to me. When we think about step trackers historically, you'll tend to think of almost an Excel spreadsheet. There's dates, there's individuals that will populate it and they'll put their own relevant steps in for that relevant day, and there might be a target and a little bit of a visualization. People that know me will also know that I'm a little bit of an Excel geek. And why do something simple when I can make it vastly more complicated for myself, which is exactly what I did with our version of the step tracker. We created almost an application in Excel. It's based around using Visual Basic for application as the back end, but primarily people will interface with almost pictures, and there'll be macros that run off of those pictures. Ours was called Take a Hike, to try and be somewhat humorous in that. And each of this is kind of your log on page. When you click onto any one of these, so creating a user, you get this pop-up box that will come out that enables you to put your forename, surname, all of that information in. The thing that was quite important to me was having a password on there. Firstly, because the number of times that you get really competitive, and I am a competitive person, and somebody accidentally messes up the tracker and deletes a whole bunch of data and causes chaos for everybody. So by putting a password on, you can't do anything in my application until you've authenticated yourself, meaning that hopefully that potential for chaos is minimized somewhat. The second area, the goal. Now, there's some people out there that will be, like myself, really competitive, and the fact that XYZ is going off and doing 13,000 a day, I'll be doing laps in my lounge at night to try and get a few extra in. There are other people that they don't necessarily want to compete for the top spot on a leaderboard. Their preference is more in line to challenging themselves, maybe pushing themselves to do 5,000 a day. So we wanted to give that potential that you can compete for the top spot if you like, but if you only want to compete against yourself, then have at it. Set your goal for what's meaningful to you, and it's then more open to all. And the other area that I thought was quite important is this make my data. Again, not everybody wants to compete for the top spot, and some people potentially just want to fly under the radar. So there's a drop down in here that if you click onto it, you can actually make yourself invisible, so that when we get to that kind of later stage, that when we're looking at the leaderboard, that you don't see that somebody's at the bottom trailing on however many steps. That might be a massive achievement for them, and we don't want to shame them. We want that if they want to be publicly visible, fine. If they want to be invisible, there's the option for that. The actual kind of core meat of this is the log steps section. And again, as I said, you can't do anything until you've at least first authenticated yourself. So there's a little pop out, you select your username as set before, you input your password, you click a button, and it'll tell you if either your password's wrong, your username's wrong, or whatever. But hopefully you get the all clear that you've now authenticated, and you can either add some new steps or you can change the previous record. And then there's a little section at the bottom for your stats at a glance. Core principle of this being that we're now on the 14th of May. If I import yesterday's score and it's showing me this month is only showing 1 day's worth of activity, I've probably not saved the file at the end of doing this exercise, and therefore I've lost potentially previous months. It's a little bit of a sense check that you can check, does what I've put in actually match back to my phone, my watch, whatever I've tracked it on, and equally, are my steps this month sounding plausible? If not, I might need to go through and select the relevant dates, check what the actual amount is, and potentially edit those if I've accidentally missed off a 0 or something silly. So you go through and you log your steps like that. And then we get to kind of the final part of it, which is that you can be on the leaderboard. So if you select it to be visible, then your username would appear here. If not, it would just say unknown, for example. We set a challenge back in May of last year, which is what this visualization's from, which was we were going to walk from Land's End down south all the way up to John O'Groats, and it was a team collaborative exercise that everyone could log their steps and hopefully get us there. You can see here that there's a number of people that have absolutely blown others out of the water, and then there's also this element of we actually overachieved. We set ourselves of going to Land's End to John O'Groats, and we ended up going there and nearly all the way back. So For those that are competitive, you've got this platform, you can see who's doing what, and that might spur you on to do a little bit extra. Now, as I said, for us, we set the goal of going from Land's End to John O'Groats, and something that's missing from what I'd built versus what I showed you before was almost that infographic, that visualization. So we're quite fortunate that we do quite frequent newsletters at our trust. And certainly when we were doing this exercise, we could almost showcase that progress. And we can see that, and I'll just move my laptop a little bit, the actual dotted line is a rough representation of the distance actually travelled as a percentage basis. So we can see that our Director of Finance absolutely stormed away and nearly did a Land's End to John O'Groats entirely by herself. But we each played our part. The overall team contributed, and ultimately, like we said, we got all the way there and then all the way back. The kind of the elephant in the room being that there is an element of conversion from steps to distance. That I'm 6'2", and actually my stride's probably longer than some people's. We used a rough calculation that said every step equates to this rough distance. So there will be a little bit of margin for error in the calculation of that. But that's largely what we built, and I'll show you a bit more of the actual tracker itself and what is built up of this. I'll just share my screen again. So this is the tracker in its entirety. And I will note this has been built previously a couple of years ago. So there's many ways that you can do this better and more efficiently going forward. This is just the best I could do at that point in time. Like I say, it's primarily built off the macros that you click a button, it pops up a user form, you fill it in, it'll put some data. Primarily, it was based around these core tabs that you can see here. That you had the authenticate, which I tried to make it invisible. I did highlight to everybody that VBA and macros, you can lock the passwords, you can lock things down to make Sheets very hidden, but it's not foolproof. So do not be putting your banking passwords on here because it's not particularly difficult to then be able to identify. But me colouring it black was an extra layer of security in my mind. You have your username, your password. This is what the user form would populate. So you put your name, your password, and then there's a little bit of a formula that checks, does that username and that password match what's in the user book? The user book itself is just a list of individuals that partook in this challenge. Their name, their email, their username, their password, their goal, whether they wanted to be visible or invisible. Going back to that, being able to compete against yourself, almost not necessarily be visible when you don't want to be. And then as you go through and you logged your steps, it essentially populated this long table of what the date was, the month that you partook in, and the number of steps you did for that relevant day. And the results would be that almost in today's Excel calculations would be an equals filter. The user that you have selected, what is their data from that full list register. So that's kind of what we'd built. There are elements that it does need some updating and some amending. And part of what we've done here, and when it is updated, we did want to make it publicly available so that if you're interested in running your own walking challenges, that we can give you this application as a platform. And whether you want to do it in a spreadsheet and just literally every single column is a different name, or you want to use our kind of blueprints, you're more than welcome to do so. And start to build in other elements. Like we did Land's End to John O'Groats, potentially building that actually into Excel so you can see your progress as you progress up the map to the relevant locations. So I'll open it up to any questions, and also obviously with this being the Value Makers meeting, any criticisms, improvements for the next iteration of it.
Thanks, Mike. Just opening up, opening up for any questions that people might have. So as I can start. I do have one question. I suppose you covered one question at the end around sharing it later, but my other question is, you talked about the conversions from steps into miles. Is that something you're planning to build in so it automatically gives you that rough 2,000 steps is equal to however many miles as part of the tool to make it a bit easier to track those targets if you've got that, I want to do this many steps or this many floors or miles?
Yeah, definitely. It's something that I will build into it because also there's an element of this focuses purely on walking, or running would be a similar comparable. But actually, if you wanted to log your swimming, you wanted to log your cycling, you will cover much more distance on a bike in a shorter period than you would physically walking. So I wanted to incorporate almost METs, as how taxing it is to undertake that activity, so that we can almost level the playing field of you went for an hour walk, you went for an hour cycle, it's an hour's worth of activity that you've contributed. And also broadening that up because the other elephant in the room for this is it's you have to be able to physically walk it. So it's almost discriminatory for people that could not. We want to open that up so that if you are in a wheelchair, you can still partake in this, and you will potentially your distance travelled would equate to steps or a distance travelled, a different metric that levels the playing field because it's about that inclusivity.
That's right. Does anyone have any other questions for Mike or any feedback on the tracker? Jenny?
So I've got no questions, but just some feedback really. I think it's really great, Mike. I think we've done a very basic similar thing here at Luft, but it's very much an Excel spreadsheet and we tied it into sort of Olympics, you know, going from our office to Olympics. But I think you've done a great job in creating that. So I just wanted to give you that feedback.
Thank you very much. I will hold my hand up. It is partly built on what we built at Alder Hey as well, Jenny. So you might have remembered similar visualizations.
No, and I'd like to pinch with pride again, if that's okay, Mike.
Yep, definitely. I'll make it publicly available on the One NHS Innovations Forum so everyone can download it, and I will make the relevant necessary changes as well to make it
I think
broader
for
in
us,
scope.
where our site is at Luft, we've got a lovely sort of 5K woodland walk. So if we could pinch that, you know, I think we could get a walking group going on site and sort of measure how many times we do the woodland walk. So thanks, Mike.
Great. Just last chance for any other questions before we move on. We're a bit ahead of schedule, so we do have a bit more time, but we can spend some more time in the breakout rooms. No? Okay. So as I said, we're running a bit ahead of what we planned. So if we go into the breakout rooms now, so I think we had them down for 20 minutes. So if we could spend probably half an hour, and then if we have a 5-minute break at the end of that. So if we plan to come back in the room back into this main room for 4 o'clock, that gives us time to have a screen break in between and to join the breakout rooms. So I believe Megan is putting the different links in the chat now. So in a minute, if you select the group you'd like to join and click the link, you'll have to leave this meeting and it will take you to another one. This is just the functionality of Teams. We can't do breakout rooms within it without Megan sitting down and individually putting people in groups. So it's a bit of a pain going in and out, but it was the easiest way that we could do this on Teams. I know other tools have better functionality for selecting meeting rooms. So I'll just put a slide up. There are no set topics, so obviously there's a theme for each room. and it's just a couple of discussion points to consider. Are there any examples of best practice that you'd like to share? So similar to Mike sharing the step tracker, is there anything you do in your trusts around the different areas that you feel would be worth sharing? And then what do you want to get out of, for those individual networks, what would you like to see happen over the next 12 months? And are there any barriers for that? And effectively, the objective from this is to get a couple of showcase sessions for future meetings that we do this on. So it's varied across the different areas that One NHS Finance focuses on, and to try and get some action points for how we can progress things and make some changes and really show how we add value through the Value Maker network. So I think all the rooms are in the chat now. So if people would like to join whichever room they would like to go in, and then we'll come back, and if one person from each room can just feed back on those points, if there's any best practice you'd like to share at future meetings, or what you'd like to get out of that the room, or what topics you'd like to cover in future meetings within those rooms, or more generally. So if people would like to join the meetings, that would be great. Is that everyone in now? Megan, can you see how many people are in each room? And I'll just join if there's any rooms.
Sorry, my mic wasn't turning on. 2 seconds. I can't actually see who's in what room.
That's fine. I think if I try and join each one, it'll tell me how many people are in the room. So I'll just go on each one and pick the one with the lowest number.
Yeah, is that all right? Sorry.
Yeah.
Until
No,
they
it's fine.
write,
No, it's an awkward way of doing it, isn't it?
yeah, I think until someone writes in the chat, I then can't see it unless I join. But do you want me to join some or?
Yeah, if you don't mind. I mean, if there's any, are you involved in any of the work streams, or just any that you're interested in?
Not really anymore. I don't really do any delivery, but I can I'll see which ones have got the least people in it.
Yeah.
Well, if you let me know which one you're going to, and then well, I'll go from there.
Yeah, no problem. I'll
All
join
right.
one and I'll just drop you a message.
Cool. Thanks, Evan.
Okay, bye.
recorded something after yeah, so. All right, yeah, so.
Just give people a few minutes to start joining the room. I can still see a few people are on hold. Hopefully that was useful, sort of speaking in the smaller network groups and having that opportunity to network. And hopefully we get some useful feedback from it for the next couple of sessions. If you we'll do a quick rundown of what we discussed now, but if there's anything you feel that is relevant to your trust, if you get in contact with Meg, myself, or Aoife, we can start to arrange some showcase sessions or do something a bit more for future meetings on those topics. Hopefully we can get through the year at least we'll have one showcase session from each of the mini networks as part of this forum. Mark, do you have a question?
It wasn't so much a question, Gavin. I was just going to say, do you want me to get the ball rolling in terms of feedback from the groups?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I was just waiting. I can still see a couple of people are on hold.
Give it a
But
minute,
yeah, if you
that's
want to come
fine.
in. Which group were you in, Mark? Sorry.
Face group. But do you want me to give just till 4 minutes past? Just give it another minute or so, just to let more people rejoin.
Yeah, if we just give it another minute, I can still see a few on hold. So the EDI group's back, the face group is back. I presume is the health and wellbeing group back, and was there anyone in the software and innovation group? Are they back in yet?
Yeah, I think we're back. I was in the software skills one.
Software. Okay. Do you want to get going, Mark, then on the Facebook group for us? If you just 5 minutes and
yeah, indeed. Thanks, Gavin. Just in terms of examples of best practice, what I found really interesting in the time in the NHS was we didn't have great where I worked. We didn't have great training for non-budget budget holders, but I think we broke into quite a good discussion, and there was 3 different people from 3 different trusts that seemed to be doing something extremely similar, but in different ways. So one example was, I'm just reading from my notes, like a training package which included bite-sized sessions covering budget holders and like a year program of training with various stakeholders. Another one was like an OD contract program for clinical staff, so they'd attend various different finance support sessions. And then there was another one like an introduction to finance and budget holder training. So we had 3 different people doing similar things, but then that broke into another discussion around the 3 other points that I kind of interlinked as one I seen really in terms of future groups, because I think one of the things in the NHS I've noticed is the networking isn't that strong. I think it is in costing quite good, but not necessarily in other areas. So whether we had a face group or a financial services group or management accounts group that kind of met regularly to sort of discuss issues in their areas, probably could roll out to procurement and contracts as well. And having focus groups, but maybe a little bit more focus on supporting each other and sharing best practice. That'd be something we thought as our group would be something that'd be useful going forward. And then we just had a general discussion about anything else outside of that we'd like to see on future sessions. And someone did suggest something really good. Well, I'm not going to, in terms of an external person coming in and doing a chat around team building and stuff, but I've kind of left that to them to see if they can pull some strings and make that happen without naming names. But yeah, that was pretty much everything we kind of discussed, really. A lot of the focus talk was around the groups and the benefits, because using financial services as an example, they don't have a networking group and probably on the periphery of a lot, but they're just as important as everyone else. And they've got 2 major key times a year, at month 9 and month 12 in particular, where they probably could deal with support from peers a bit more in terms of sort of certainly in the build up and prep to that period.
No,
if anybody else in my group thinks I've missed anything, just jump in, by the way. Don't worry if I've sorry, Gavin.
No, that was everything.
No, I was just going to say thanks for that feedback. I think that's helpful. Coming from costing, obviously the networks are very strong in costing, and I think that's because you're often a standalone person, it forces you to network because you've got to get that support. Whereas some of the bigger teams, like financial management, because there's a few colleagues within the trust, you tend not to look outside as much. Or Bolton, for example, partner with Wrighting and Wigan and Lee, so we probably work with them a bit closer than we would do any of the other GM trusts. So I think that's a very fair point around those networks and how we bring them together for more general things. I think there are a few subject specific things, agreement balances and some of the IRFs, but yeah, I think that's a very good point of how we work better as a network on some of those areas. Any other feedback from anyone else on anything from the FACE group or any from the other groups that have anything to comment? No. Should we move on? Who wants to go next? Should look for volunteers before I pick on someone. Michael, your hand's up first. Do you want to go next?
Yeah, I can go for the software skills group. We found it quite interesting that Adam has already submitted an innovation, so it was understanding what his innovation was that has gone through the One NHS Finance Innovation Forum, and it was quite interesting his use of MS Teams and Power Automate. Now, I don't know how many trusts here are able to use Power Automate or have seen some of the things you can do with it, but it's absolutely amazing the stuff you can start to do with it, and obviously the work that Adam's put into using it, it sounded amazing. Very envious because at the Christie we're not allowed to use it, so genuinely gutted. We had a little bit of talk around the use of SQL in processing and trying to almost replicate that pseudo RPA, and at the Christie we've built some ETLs, or extract transform loads, which essentially is just processing things through SQL to try and cut the manual intervention. And then Julius was telling us at the end about his use of fresh tickets and having a ticketing system so that when requests come in, it goes through this ticketing system. And actually, there's efficiencies there that they can batch things together, do things in bulk, share out the workload amongst his team. So just some really useful stuff that take away from it.
Oh, that's really interesting. Thanks, Mike. I know we're starting with the ticketing now at Bolton because of all the corporate reductions. We're moving to that methodology going forward. So that could be something really timely to look at the next meeting for people. Mark, did you want to come in there?
Yeah, just recently we've had some issues with Power BI and people pressing buttons and just expecting a number to be generated and it's correct. So although all this stuff's great and it's quite efficient, it can't beat a bit of human intervention as a double check to make sure it's right and proper and not just assume it's right is what I would say with anything sort of power driven by AI.
No, absolutely. I know I've had the issue recently around numbers coming through and being hard typed in and just like not 100% where that number's come from, and I'm a bit skeptical, but always good to have that sense check and that ability to work back and see where it's come from. You're not just relying on a system, because you get the flip side of that, it breaks and the person who set it up's moved on and no one's got a clue of what to do with it. So it's how we future-proof things and validate things when they come out of that as well, isn't it? I mean, that's the purpose of us being here, that the AI stuff is great at doing the churn, but we're providing the intelligence that really supports it and makes the difference. Okay. Any other software, on the software innovation that anyone wants to come in on? Okay. Matt, you had your hand up before. Do you want to go next for the EDI group?
Yeah, sure thing. So yeah, I was part of the ED&I discussion. So we had about 4 different organisations in the room, and it was really interesting to hear some of what's going on out there, some of the kind of more simple stuff in terms of celebratory events and people following the ED&I calendar, making sure various religious celebrations and faiths and important key dates are being celebrated in different ways. So we talked a bit about that, the importance of doing other simple things like publicising trust networks So at Tameside, for example, we're going to make sure that on our SharePoint pages that we've got all the networks on there when the meeting's actually happening, and actually physically sticking it on the notice board as well, so that people on site can see it, because quite often you have to consciously navigate to the SharePoint site, don't you, rather than when you walk past to make yourself a brew or whatever, you can see on the notice board. So just making sure that people are aware of that, and also just making sure that people are aware, line management wise, that people are allowed time to attend these networks. So some line managers might not necessarily be aware of that, so it's just kind of re-emphasizing and reinforcing that sort of message. But then the conversation sort of turned more towards recruitment, and then really understanding what different organizations are doing about inclusive recruitment. And I think this, to answer the exam question that Gavin put on the screen before around what we need to focus on over the next 12 months, I think it'd be really interesting to do a bit of a session on inclusive recruitment and share that best practice and really understand what works for people, what hasn't, and why, and so on and so forth. So, you know, there's so many different stances around. Do you go for a diverse recruitment panel, for example, or do you make sure that your team actually have been trained in the sort of rigor of how to actually recruit properly? I believe, and I didn't know this actually until a few moments ago, that the the SDN network actually put out there a training course on how to recruit. So, you know, it's things like that, making sure that your staff are aware of that and have the necessary skills to be able to recruit properly without sort of introducing that unconscious bias that can easily come into the equation, can't it? So, yeah, I think that kind of broadly summarizes what we've discussed, but definitely something around inclusive recruitment would be useful, I think, as a point to discuss in the future. If I've missed anything, Gavin and everyone else that was on the call, you know, please chip in, but I think that broadly covers it.
No, thanks, Matt. I think, yeah, that covers everything. I think the only other thing we talked about is how we spotlight things. So rotating it on newsletters rather than having EGI every week, doing it once a month or once. I know the Christie do it once every 3 weeks, or they did. I don't know if they've changed since I left. But it gives you the opportunity to get enough stuff on there and enough content without stressing over it every week, and it spreads the burden. So, you know, we're doing this, we're highlighting it. It doesn't have to be every single week we're doing this. We can spread it out and do it over a month and make it a little bit more meaningful for people that way as well. That's not to say if something important came up you couldn't share it, but just something to think about so it's not overkill with all this pressure people are under at the moment. So if there's no more questions on that, that leaves our health and wellbeing group. So is anyone, I think, yeah, so is anyone from that group like to feedback? So they probably do, but yeah, sorry, I didn't see who that was.
Oh, it's me, Ellie.
Oh, hi, Ellie.
Hiya. Yes, there was some really good conversation. Loads of new ideas came out that I think we all agree we can take back to our organisation. So I can run through a couple. So coffee mornings seemed like they were a good idea, but I think it was Melanie where you said it was you gave a topic in advance so that people didn't join the meeting, and then it was really stilted with nothing to talk about. So the topic could be like your favourite film or favourite food. So people came in with a subject, which kind of helped the conversation a bit better. There was protected learning for CPD and some protected time for planning for work in diaries as well that was supported. There was some Reiki at MFT. And I know here we've had desk yoga and laughing yoga at the Christie, just short YouTube videos, which have always gone down quite well. And everyone can find 5 minutes in their day. Charity events, so something outside of work. So kind of we talked about the importance of knowing people as more than just work colleagues and knowing them on a personal level. And it kind of reinforces working relationships as well. We had a quiz, but the slant on this was that someone different hosted each time. So you kind of get you don't get the same person kind of holding it and talking all the time, but you get that engagement across the team and a blend of different ideas. A cook along on Teams, which was a bit innovative, and yeah, it sounded interesting. And monthly recognition awards as well, where the team would vote for their colleagues of, you know, an achievement or a good piece of work that, you know, they'd completed. And I guess to add, at the Christie here, we have a health and wellbeing Teams channel, and it is just for sharing kind of, you know, non-work related things. So if you went on a walk at lunch, or, you know, you did something on a weekend that, you know, you want to share with the team. And again, it helps you know the person behind kind of the work colleague that you know. And then lastly, we're in development here of producing some, it's like health and wellbeing like objectives, a bit of a charter. So we do quite a lot at the Christie, but you know, when it feels like you're doing a lot and you've kind of, there's not really a structure to it. So by kind of writing it down and kind of, it's like visualizing a promise to the team of, you know, what you're going to commit to and how you're going to support health and well-being. So, and I think for me, that's kind of more how I work. And then you can monitor you know, how, if it's successful, and you can kind of hold yourself accountable a bit more to what you've said you'd achieve. So that's just going through like final sign off at the minute. So I'm more than happy to share if anyone else would like to see it. I think that was everything. Did anyone else on the group? Was there anything that we needed to add?
No, I think that was everything.
Yeah, very well summarised, Ellie.
Thanks.
Thanks, Ellie. I think it's a really good idea about the health and wellbeing charter, and I think sort of as a network, thinking about that in terms of change and what everyone's going through at the moment with restructures and back office reductions, that it's probably really important to have something to focus on what people are going through, more work specific, and how we can support it within that charter. So I think that'd be really interesting to share at some point when it's done. Notice you missed off your action weeks and your Hey Mickey and cheerleading videos.
Thanks, Gavin.
Just to embarrass Ellie. When I started at the Christie, every team went and they did something different once a quarter, and they came back and presented it at the team meeting. So that was really interesting, I think. And some of them were very basic, and then Ellie's team always went out of their way to do something extra special, and some entertaining videos.
Hopefully you haven't got them.
I don't, sadly, no. Any other comments on the health and wellbeing side, or anything anyone's got to add? No. Okay. So that's the feedback from our network groups. Hopefully this format's been useful for people, and the feedback from each group is give people ideas. I know a lot of people are in more than one network, so I'm hoping this is a way we can touch base without it being overly onerous and time consuming. So we'll trial this for the next couple of meetings, and hopefully it's beneficial. If not, we can look at doing something different. There's not one set way of doing this, so we're trying to make it work for as many people as possible. So the last action item on the agenda is any other business. So I don't have anything to add, so I'll just open it to the floor if anyone's got anything to add, or if Megan has any comments or actions that we need to support the central team on going forward. No?
Can you say that again, please, Gavin?
Is there any other business or anything from your central team that you'd like us to raise at this point? Anything you'd like us to support on?
I don't think so. The only thing is that we've got the Career Shapers programme open and the Accelerate Deputies programme open for applications this month.
Yes.
They close on the 30th, but that's the only thing for me.
Yeah, I think those programs are always really good. So if we can push them in our own organisations. I know I've been on the Breaking Diversity Barriers and going beyond programs, and they're always useful, if even only from a networking perspective, to meet new people and see what other people do and get those career stories. So I would recommend anyone get involved with them if they can. On that note, Megan, as well, I've noticed there was the One NHS finance update today. There's health and wellbeing. There's mental health awareness week. And my emails have crashed, so I can't see the date for that. So I suppose from the health and wellbeing perspective, if anyone is doing that, it would be interesting to share in advance so other people can pinch with pride ahead of the event if you're planning on doing anything. Stacey, did you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you. Just on the mental health week, that's this week, isn't it? But I was just wondering, we asked in our health and wellbeing group whether there are any network channels. Every time I try to sign up to anything on One NHS Finance, it only ever asks me to join a software network one, but there doesn't seem to be any network channels for health and wellbeing or EDI or being a face. I just wondered whether there are any that I don't know about.
I know there's the Inside Northwest and the Inside National channels. Megan, are there any sort of network specific ones other than that? I'm not sure. I don't think there are any. I know the EDI does meet fairly regularly, and there is a separate meeting next week that Sam Simpson chairs for that one. I don't think there is anything for any of the others. Megan, are you aware of anything on the Teams channels?
Anything being posted on the Teams channel? Sorry.
So are there any Teams channels specifically on, the One NHS Teams, Northwest ones? Is there anything specifically for health and wellbeing or any of the other networks?
We haven't got a health and wellbeing channel itself, but we've got the Inside National one, which has got everyone on it, and anything coming up from health and wellbeing will be posted on there, including the monthly webinars and also the, like you mentioned earlier, the mental health awareness week.
Thanks.
So if anyone's looking for anything to look at the national or the Inside Northwest or Inside National.
Inside National probably the best place to look.
Inside National, yeah. Great. Anything else anyone's got to add before we close the meeting? No? Okay, I will give you all 5 minutes back then. Enjoy the rest of your day. Hopefully people are getting finished now and spending some time in the sun.
Thanks, Gavin.
Thanks, Gavin.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.